All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the stream. Welcome if you are new. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And thank you, as always, for waiting patiently for the intro to finish up there. Let more people kind of file in. Always appreciate that. So, yeah, I hope you guys do enjoy the new intro. It was highly requested. You guys want to have Boss as the intro. So I figured we could do a kind of blend of everything that we've done before. So there you go. That is here to stay as long as you guys still enjoy it. We have a few different topics to go over and discuss over the course of today's stream. One of the topics we're going to be talking about pretty extensively is Astrobot. We have a bunch of new information about Astrobot. I think pretty good information as well that a lot of people have been curious about. So we're going to talk all about that. We're going to go over that. We're also going to be talking about Chinajoy, where Sony has confirmed their PS5 game lineup that's going to be part of this. And some people are kind of excited because we should be getting some updates on some of the China Hero Project titles that, you know, people have kind of been waiting to hear more about. So we're going to cover that as well. We're going to be covering new information about Sony's Japan studio, which obviously was shuttered a few years ago. But we have new information from one of the studio heads that worked there, giving us a little bit more insight into the situation. Like, why did Sony, specifically, you know, when Jim Ryan was the CEO, why did they decide to shut down Sony's Japan studio? What was going on there? Should make for some interesting conversation. And we have a couple of bonus topics saved for the end of the stream. Nothing major, but if we do have time, we will cover those bonus topics. I think we have about 2 of them. So, guys, listen, before we dive into these topics and before we have any of these discussions, I do want to first just thank you once again for tuning in. Really appreciate the support if you're watching live, but I do know that there are quite a few people who would like to catch the live streams but can't, so they watch them later on. Just want to make sure I thank those viewers as well. Do me a favor, hit that like button. If you enjoy these streams, if you enjoy the content, hitting that like button is the easiest way to let me know, and it helps with YouTube's algorithm quite a bit so we can bring new people over here to the channel and continue to grow this community. There are a couple of ways you can support the channel, this content, and this community directly. As you guys know, I do rely on you to be able to run the channel in the way that I do. We are completely fan-funded. We don't do sponsorships or anything like that. So the first way is you can consider becoming a channel member. It gives you access to exclusive perks such as the Members Lounge, which we will be doing after the stream today. So if you are a channel member, please look forward to that. You also gain access to exclusive gameplay streams that we do from time to time. If you're already a channel member, you can also gift memberships, which I know a lot of people are very appreciative of. So, you know, people can gain access to some of that stuff. Or you can also donate a super chat. You can ask a question, give an opinion, make a statement, anything in between. It all helps tremendously. There is a 4th bonus way. There's a direct donation link at the top of the chat. You can still leave a message just like you would a super chat, but you send a direct donation to the content creator. So, yeah, guys, appreciate everything you do for me, this channel, the community. Big shout out to everybody who supports. But with that being said, I do want to dive into the first topic of discussion today, which talks about Astrobot. Okay, we have quite a few different things to go over here with Astrobot. For those who are unaware, Astrobot is coming out very soon. It's coming out September 6th. So we are just mere weeks away, honestly, from this game dropping. So it makes sense that we're going to start getting more information. We're going to start hearing more about it. We're going to start getting, you know, not just updates, but basically we're going to start seeing the marketing really kick off for this game, which is cool because I think that there's a lot of excitement for it. I think a lot of people are interested in learning more about it. One of the things we are learning is how long Astrobot is going to be and how apparently it's actually made in a overhauled engine, which is interesting as well. So we're starting here with an article from WCCF Tech. It says Team Asobi's upcoming Astrobot for PlayStation 5 will feature an overhauled game engine and will take around 12 to 15 hours to complete. In a new interview with Team Asobi's studio director and creative director, Nicolas Doucet, French journalist and YouTuber Julien Chiez, I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, talked about the sequel to 2020's Astro's Playroom featuring 80 levels. We already knew that the sequel would be the studio's biggest game to date, but now we also get additional details about the actual length of the main game. As revealed by Doucet, the team would rather reduce the length of the game than get repetitive. Team Asobi wanted a sequel with a constant tempo instead of just stretching out the game. Apparently, the team never aimed for the game to be 20 plus hours. Instead, they opted for the game to be around 12 to 15 hours. Many players consider this as the sweet spot for the platform titles of this day and age. There we go. Compared to 2020's PS5 launch title, Astrobot will feature an overhauled game engine, resulting in additional physics as well as improved visuals. In addition, for the sequel, Asobi formed an internal Dualsense 2.0 team consisting of 3 to 4 people in order to think about new ideas on how to use the PS5 DualSense controller. As most of you recall, Astro's Playroom was already a showcase for Sony's PS5 controller, and from the looks of it, Astrobot will make even better use of the DualSense. And so, yeah, this is a relatively decent interview, or extensive, I should say, interview that was done. But we learned some, I'd say, pretty important information about Astrobot. It's going to be between 12 and 15 hours. And I do wonder how you guys are feeling about this. For me, I think that's actually the perfect length for a game like Astrobot. I don't think it really needs to be like 20 plus hours, just because, I mean, it would be nice if that's what they wanted to do, if they're like, look, we have enough content here without it getting too repetitive. And I think that's kind of the key here, and that's really what they seem to emphasize, is they didn't want the game to end up getting overly repetitive and feeling like it was kind of padded just for the sake of, we can say it's 20 plus hours. The idea of it being 12 to 15, I'm assuming you can complete it in 12 hours if you're getting through it pretty briskly, pretty quickly. 15 hours if you're maybe trying to be a completionist and unlock everything, which I think most people who play Astrobot are likely going to do that. So I think it's pretty good. 15 hours is long for platformers. Yeah, that's another thing I've seen too. Some people were responding to it wasn't necessarily a rumor, but there were some kind of like rumblings, I guess, that the game was going to be 20 plus hours. And some people were like, that actually sounds kind of nuts for a platformer. Like, maybe it would be more appropriate for it to be a little bit shorter. But yeah, 12 to 15 hours, it sounds like there's a pretty good amount of content. I mean, they did confirm there's going to be 80 levels. Crash is 6 to 8 hours. Super Mario Wonder is 10 hours. Interesting. So it almost sounds like it's leaning into kind of being one of the longer modern 3D platformers. Yes, they could be lowballing it as well. Maybe the game could be longer than 15 hours. Maybe it could go up to 16, 17, 18 hours. I guess it really just depends on how you're playing it, you know? If you're really just having fun in the different environments and you're kind of experimenting a little bit, or you're just kind of looking at every nook and cranny, like, yeah, you could probably end up going more than 15 hours. But I think it's also interesting that they're saying they overhauled the engine. I think it does kind of make sense because, I mean, they've had, a decent amount of time to work on the game. It's obviously not like a game that requires 5 or 6 years of development time, but it does make sense that they would make some pretty significant improvements to the engine. The thing we talked about yesterday, and I am still wondering, is if we're going to see like a PS5 Pro upgrade for Astro's Playroom, because when you think about the purpose, or sorry, not Astro's Playroom, Astrobot, when you think of the purpose of Astro's Playroom was there to essentially show off the PS5 and make it known that, like, hey, here's everything the PS5 can do. And part of that was having the game run at 4K 60 FPS. So I do wonder when the PS5 Pro drops if Astrobot will be fully enhanced for that to take advantage of it. It would kind of make sense to do that. But they do mention the, yeah, path traced Astrobot. Yeah, that's what we're going to see. Actually, pretty cool. I don't think we'll see that though. But it is interesting they mentioned the DualSense 2.0, right? They talk about how they have a dedicated team, a small team of 3 to 4 people. But if you think about it, that's 3 or 4 people whose sole purpose is to think about new and interesting ways to innovate with the DualSense. When you think about Astro's Playroom, the biggest thing that people gravitated towards, one of the biggest things, was the use it made of the DualSense. A lot of people really felt that, and they still feel now, that it is the best use of the DualSense that we've seen thus far in you know, during this generation. And we've had a lot of games take advantage of the DualSense. We've had a lot of games do really good things with the DualSense, but it really does seem like Astro's Playroom remains the king. And so it'll be interesting to see what else they could pull off with the DualSense specifically, because when I think about everything that they did with the DualSense in Astro's Playroom, I really don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know how much further you could push it, but I guess if it was my job to sit there for 3 or 4 years and think of new ways to utilize this DualSense controller, I'm sure I'd think of something. So it'll be cool. We have Waylark Redux with the super chat here saying, hopefully it's not too easy and it's challenging like a Mario game. It's interesting you should mention that, Waylark. They did confirm previously that there will be difficulty options in Astrobot, which I think a lot of people like yourself are going to be happy about that because they are going to have a higher difficulty. So if you do want that extra challenge and you want it to be difficult, like I don't know how difficult it's going to be. They didn't really say. They just confirmed that there will be difficulty options. So it could be extremely challenging if you're playing it at the highest difficulty. It could be, I don't know, it could make the game like really, really challenging, or it could just be moderately challenging. But either way, if you're somebody who was kind of worried about that, whether the game would be too easy or whether it would be too difficult, I mean, it is a game that's rated E for everyone. So maybe, if young kids are playing it and they're struggling on certain areas, they'll want to lower the difficulty. I think that's actually great because you're going to have so many different people playing this game. Having difficulty options, I think, makes a lot of sense. So for me, I'm probably just going to start by playing on the regular difficulty. And if I do feel like it's too easy and I'm just kind of breezing through it, no problem, I will probably, increase the difficulty and go to the highest difficulty and see what that's like. It's the opposite. I'm so bad at it. Just playing the regular difficulty. I'm like, I have to play Astrobot on easy mode, guys. Sorry. I got to do it. But I'm really liking everything I'm hearing about Astrobot. I will continue to cover it and I enjoy covering it because, it just makes sense that as we approach the launch, we're going to hear more about it. Difficulty options, 12 to 15 hours to complete it, maybe a little bit longer if you're trying to go for 100%. DualSense 2.0 team. So I guess we can expect further innovation with the DualSense. And they overhauled the engine, which tells me that this game is actually going to look, hopefully in some ways, substantially better and improved upon Astro's Playroom. Because look, Astro's Playroom, if you go play it now, it still holds up. It looks very good. Obviously, the art style, more than anything, carries it. But it's crisp. It's had a high resolution, runs at a smooth 60 FPS. So if they can take that even further, with Astrobot, that's a welcome addition as well. So we do have another topic here, though, regarding Astrobot. It says here, once again from WCCF Tech, Sony might not have much this year coming from its own PlayStation studios, but Astrobot certainly is the notable exception. Unveiled during May's State of Play broadcast, Astrobot promised to be the biggest game made to date by Team Asobi with 80 levels. Speaking to Edge Magazine, issue number 400, Team Asobi's studio director and creative director Nicholas Doucette revealed that the developer considered an open world design but decided against it to provide optimal variety. Actually, we did consider it at first. Should this be an open world game? In the end, we went for a level based approach because that was the one that gave us the most control over the game's variety. On that note, Doucette also said Astrobot will continuously provide players with new mechanics to learn and experiment with to avoid repetition. We don't really stretch any mechanic too much until it becomes repetitive. We give you just enough to want more and then move on to something else. We want it to be fresh, to be really surprising the player. Power ups will be key to the ever changing mechanics, as Team Asobi only plans to use each 2 to 3 times throughout the entire game. Usually, we use them twice, up to 3 times maximum. The first time you use the power up, you get introduced a little bit to what the next use case will be, like a preview of what's to come. There will also be free DLC coming that really takes the power ups to a level of high precision. So we're learning, again, more information about Astrobot that I think is pretty important here. And we have Cypherpunk with a super chat saying, yeah, I feel Sony made a lot of their games too easy. Yeah, that is a complaint that some people have had with some of their titles. And it's interesting because I think the difficulty of like the puzzles in particular, I remember a lot of people feeling like specifically in something like God of War Ragnarok that a lot of the puzzles were like ruined, or they felt like they didn't have enough time to properly think things through and figure it out themselves because the character or the partner character that's with you, if you just wait for like longer than 30 seconds, they basically just tell you, oh, I think you should look at this or do this. And, you like instantly figure it out. But when it comes to like difficulty overall, um, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if seeing the success of something like Elden Ring, right? Knowing that there is no difficulty level and it was such a mega hit, it's such a wide-reaching game. I think that should give developers as well as publishers a lot of reassurance that, listen, if you want to make your games difficult, don't be afraid to do so. This game doesn't even have a difficulty option, and it went on to sell 25 million copies. And to a lot of people, it's one of the hardest games they've ever played, right? So that should give, I think, developers a lot of confidence. And like even when you talk about having difficulty options, it should give them confidence when they go to make the higher difficulty option extremely difficult. They shouldn't feel intimidated. They shouldn't worry about it. In fact, a lot of people these days, like yourself, Cypherpunk, will probably welcome that and be happy about it. We also have Cobb Sanity, a member for 13 months. He says, free DLC is a W in my book. Absolutely. This is something that Sony has, I think, been doing a really, really good job with, is providing these significant free DLC updates. And we're getting confirmation that Astrobot will, in fact, receive free DLC updates. And they specifically say that what we can expect, at least with a portion of these updates, are new power-ups that are apparently going to take things to the next level, which is fascinating. But if we cover this more extensively here, they're confirming that when they went to start to develop Astrobot, they were considering making it an open world. And you do have to wonder what an open world Astrobot game would look like, right? I'm really glad, however, that they chose not to, because I'm not saying that it would be bad. I don't think it would be bad, but it's just we do have so many open world games. And when you think about it, when you think about the way that Astro's Playroom was constructed, I feel like it would kind of make sense to riff off of that and go to that kind of level based structure where you can kind of go from one level to the next. But I think in this interview, the head of Team Asobi reveals the most important thing, which is the reason why we chose not to go open world is because that's what gave us the most variety. And when I think about a game like Astrobot, I think, what am I going to be looking for? What's going to matter most to me? It is absolutely going to be that variety. And if you go over this interview, the major takeaway here for Astrobot, from what I can tell, simply is, look, we want to make it as diverse as possible, have as much variety as possible, but we want to make sure nothing gets stale throughout your entire playthrough. Even if you complete it in 15 or 16 hours, or whether you complete it in 10 to 12 hours, we want to make sure that your entire time you're playing, it feels like nothing is getting tired, nothing is getting repetitive. You're always moving from one thing to another. And if you think about it, if they were to have went with an open world, maybe that would have been lost, right? Potentially, depending on how they would have handled it. It's really difficult to say because I don't know, maybe in the future we'll get an open world Astrobot game, but really interesting insight there. And we have Corey the Legend Landiga coming in, making his presence known. What is up, Corey? Dropping 5 membership gifts for you guys, getting us started today. Corey, thank you so much, man. I hope you guys like the new pop-ups I have here. Very Astro themed today. But thank you for that, Corey. Also, I don't know if you saw it yet, man, because I know you're like Boss's #1 fan. Yeah, you're saying in the name of Boss. Yeah, guys, if we do hit 25 members today, we'll bring Boss in. We'll feed the beast. He was chilling up here earlier. Lately, though, he's been I think he found a new spot to sleep during the day. Because he hasn't been in here as much. But Corey, I don't know if you missed it, man. When this stream is finished, check out the intro. I think you'll like it. In the name of Boss, check out the intro. But yeah, thank you for the continued support, guys. Anyone getting anything gaming related on Prime Day? I actually forgot that was popping up. Oh, you know what? Yeah, this reminds me. I almost forgot to mention it, especially since you're here now, Corey. And I know a lot of you guys really, really love Boss. You know, he's a huge part of the channel. So, I'm not going to say what it is, but in the coming days or weeks, shouldn't be weeks, should be days, I'm going to have a surprise for everybody that I think you guys will enjoy. And that's all I'll say about that. So just be on the lookout. I'm aiming for this Sunday. If that changes, I'll let you know. But I'm aiming for this Sunday. All right. Getting back on topic here, talking about Astrobot. So again, we're learning that they did consider going open world with Astrobot, but they decided against it because they were focused on the variety, and apparently going from level to level and having 80 different levels allowed them to have the most amount of variety. And then again, if we read this section one more time, he says, we don't really stretch any mechanic too much until it becomes repetitive. We give you just enough to want more and then move on to something else. We want it to be fresh, really surprising to the player. So it does sound like they're going to have a lot of new mechanics here in Astrobot, but they really, once again, are putting this emphasis on we're not going to linger on it too long. We're going to let you get a feel for it. We're going to let you start to enjoy it. And then, boom, before you can even think about it becoming overly repetitive, we're already moving on to the next new mechanic we're introducing to you. And this is also interesting. The first time you use the power-up, you get introduced to it a little bit. You use them twice, 3 times maximum. So these power-ups you get, you only use them up to 3 times. It almost sounds to me like one of the things they're aiming for here is they are maybe hoping that by kind of sticking to this, we don't want anything to feel repetitive notion, and really sticking to just we're only letting you use the power up a maximum of 3 times, it's going to add some type of replay value and replayability to this game, where people, when they finish, are going to be like, man, I feel like I barely got to really, you know, spend enough time with these power ups. And so I could see it doing that, you know. I also wonder if in order to platinum this game or to get 100% of this game, I do wonder if you're going to have to replay it or if you can just do it in one playthrough. I'm going to assume you only need one playthrough, that it's not a requirement to replay, or maybe it'll be the sense of, you know, because I'm thinking replay as in I'm going to start the game over from scratch. But the reality is you'll just be able to revisit the levels and revisit the worlds. So I guess I basically just answered my own question there. Kind of remembering the way that Astro's Playroom handled it, that's essentially what happens. Once you're done with the world, you can go back to it at any time and play it as much as you want. Am I going to shave boss? No, we're not doing anything like that. Definitely nothing like that. I don't think boss would be very happy with me if I decided to shave him. There would be no reason to do that though, either. It just feels like it would be just to annoy him, and I'm not going to be mean to boss like that. That meme guy, you're saying so you can't get them again in the same playthrough, talking about the power ups. I would assume you can. Like the way I'm imagining it works is when you're playing through a level, you use the power up as you go through that level about 3 times. And then once you complete that level, you move on to another one and there's a whole different power up you use. That's my assumption. And so if you want to reuse that power up, you go back to that level and you kind of replay it. That's my assumption on how that's going to work. But that's how I'm imagining it in my head anyway. And we have a gaming survivor here, remember, for 14 months. He says, modern devs are failing with games like Concord because they are very arrogant with huge egos. It's time to respect and cater to paying players again. Well, I can mostly agree with what you're saying here, gaming survivor. I do think that it's unwise to take that kind of arrogant approach with any game you're making, because you cannot assume that what you're doing is going to appeal to a wide audience, or you can't assume that it's even going to appeal to enough people to make it sustainable by itself, right? There does have to be a certain level of balance. I think that's the key. I think that game devs should have the ability and the freedom to kind of do what they want, right? Because we have to respect the creative side of game development, because if we don't, I mean, that'll kind of ruin the whole thing, right? So the best games we've ever played are due to the creativity, the creative side of it. But I do think that there does have to be a bit of a balance where the developers should absolutely be open to the feedback and open to hearing what people have to say. And if there are certain things that people are not on board with, or if it seems, more importantly, like the majority of what people are saying, is problematic, that's something where I think they do need to figure that out and listen to it. I really do believe that. But yeah, I do wonder if any changes are going to be made to Concord um, now that the closed beta has ended. They have a lot of data. They have a lot to work with. They have a lot of feedback. A lot of people who played it are making videos, talking about it, saying what they want to see changed, saying what they want to see improved. I do think that there are certain things with Concord that are already set in stone. But yeah, we're going to see what happens with Concord. Again, I don't plan to talk about it too much going forward. It really just comes down to seeing how the game's going to perform and whether or not it's going to be successful for Sony and for the studio. And if not, well, we'll have to see what ends up happening. But I have a rundown here when it comes to talking about Astrobot. This is basically a quick and brief breakdown of the entire interview that was done with the head of Team Asobi. So it says here, since the creation of Asobi, went from 25 to 30 developers up to 65 developers. So they basically doubled in size in just a couple of years. He said it's a small team compared to other studios with big games, but it's the perfect size for them since they can still keep Team Asobi's DNA. He added that if they grow even more, he wonders if they can keep that DNA, but that for him now it's the perfect size and they have a really good dynamic. So he talks about the size of Team Asobi. Will they grow? I do imagine that they will continue to grow, and I could see them going beyond 65 developers, but it's interesting because Nicholas Doucette seems to be a little bit wary of that, where if they do get too big, are they going to lose the overall DNA of the team? I could see how that can become problematic. The more developers you have, the more management that needs to be in place, and it could be difficult to, keep up with all that, and it can lead to certain shifts and change within the studio. It says here they completely overhauled the engine for Astrobot. The game will be much prettier, have more physics, etc., compared to Astro's Playroom. As we said, the main game is 12 to 15 hours. So we already covered that. They would rather reduce the time of the game than give the impression of repetition. They confirm, and again, in the interview, they confirmed there's going to be there was a prototype of an open world Astrobot game. Says Nicholas Doucette was asked specifically about a PlayStation-themed planet, but he did not want to answer to avoid overhyping things and to keep some suspense and some surprise. So he didn't say no, there won't be a PlayStation-themed planet, but it sounds like there might be, and it would make sense, right, if you consider what Astrobot is doing. It says here there are some walls that Astro can touch with his hand that are smooth at first and then become a little rough and then smooth again with haptic feedback, indicating that there is a secret passage behind the rough section. So again, another innovation that they're bringing with the DualSense. Why there is no PlayStation VR 2 compatibility. Astrobot is not a game that can be made hybrid because as a VR game, it will be mediocre. To make a good VR game, it should be like Rescue Mission, where everything must be thought out for VR specifically. He was asked if PlayStation releases more hardware in the future, if they will be added to Astrobot, like the new updates Astro's Playroom are currently receiving. He said if new hardware is released, they will be added to Playroom. So there we go. We got the confirmation. We're going to end up seeing the PS5 Pro at some point added to Astrobot or in the Playroom. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about the latest interviews with the head of Team Asobi talking about Astrobot. Irfan says he's going to live on that planet forever. What about a Bloodborne Yharnam world? I think they already teased that. Yeah, Astro is basically some form of live service title confirmed. It's going to get constant updates, free DLC. They're going to keep you coming back. No, I love it, though. I love everything about this game, frankly, sounds perfect. It does. I haven't heard a single thing about this game that makes me hesitate or feel like, I'm not so sure. Literally everything that they've said. Yeah, until they announce the Astro Battle Pass. Yeah, then there's going to be a problem. And we have Morgan Anstein coming in, re-upping their membership today, coming back to Greatness Awaits. Morgan, thank you so much for that, buddy. Really appreciate that support. Appreciate you deciding to re-up your membership. Look forward to your exclusive perks, man. We are going to be doing a members lounge after this stream today. So again, if you are a channel member, if you have that badge next to your name, you'll be able to join us. And, obviously, if you do become a member, you'll gain access to all the previous members lounges as well. Today, I will say, I don't know if it's going to be a long members lounge. It's hard to say. We'll keep it, we'll flow with it. That's kind of what we've been doing. I say that just because the last two members lounges I did were particularly long. Like they were basically over 2.5 hours. But yeah, everything I'm hearing about Astrobot sounds pretty much perfect. I think that the way Sony's handling the marketing is good. They're not overdoing it, but they're allowing Team Asobi to talk about the game, to reveal new info, trickle new info out about the game. And the more I hear about it, the more excited I get. Just because every time I hear about it, it just sounds like, yeah, that's exactly what I want from this game. So I will be sure to keep you guys fully updated with anything more we learn about Astrobot. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more. I'm sure there's going to be more gameplay that gets released, more details, stuff like that. And yeah, man, September 6th can't get here quick enough. We've been talking about Concord lately, and that's fine. You know, Concord has to have its time with the betas and the release in August. But for me, it really feels like things are going to kick off in a big way when Astrobot drops, because I don't know, that's happening at the beginning of September. There's a lot of expectation, I guess you could say, about what PlayStation's going to do in September. There's a lot of expectation that Sony's going to have a lot to say in September. And then obviously after September, we're into the thick of the holiday season, October, November, but then we go right into the Game Awards. And there's a lot. There's a lot that could go down. So I guess you could say maybe it kicks off with Concord, but for me, it feels like things are really going to kick off in a big way with Astrobot, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am. By the way, guys, before we move on to the next topic, do me a big favor and hit that like button. We are already sitting at 91 likes, which is great to see. Appreciate that. Let's see if we can bump that up to 100 likes, maybe go beyond that. It helps the streams tremendously. We have a super chat from Steranko who says, just want to drop a chat and say, keep up the good work. Love the streams. Well, thank you so much for that, Steranko. I'll do my best to keep the channel flowing, keep it running. I am going to have more videos coming out. I know some people have been asking me about that. Don't worry. It's just been a little bit difficult lately to make like news videos and stuff because there's not a whole lot of news, but I'll get working on that. We're going to hopefully strike a better balance between streams and videos. I want to try to keep as many people happy as I possibly can. But Steranko, I do appreciate you just stopping by and showing some support, man. And we also have Cypherpunk here with another super chat. Really appreciate it, bud. You're saying someone else mentioned Mario, and I checked Odyssey's length. It's about 12 hours also, but says it's about 60 to 62 hours to 100%. That's wild. That's such a massive gap. Yeah, I would have never known. It does make me wonder if when Team Asobi says it's 12 to 15 hours, if they're basically saying that 15 hours is the high watermark if you want to 100% it. They didn't mention anything about 100%ing it. And that's what's fascinating to me, because it does seem like Astrobot is the type of game that would have a massive amount of collectibles, a lot of secrets. They did kind of mention that. They said there's going to be a lot of hidden things, a lot of secrets to discover. But 80 levels sounds like a lot. It really is. It would be surprising to me, not in a bad way, but just, oh, okay, like I guess you can 100% complete this game in 15 hours. But they didn't say 100%. They just said you can complete it. It can be completed within 12 to 15 hours. So it does make me wonder, yeah, if there's going to be like maybe they're purposely not mentioning that yet. Maybe they want to save that. They want to talk about it next month or something. Be like, oh, by the way, if you want to 100% this game, said main game is 12 to 15 hours. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So if you want to 100% it, maybe it'll take it up to 25 hours, maybe even 30. I mean, it really depends again on. See, what I'm wondering is, you're saying for Mario Odyssey, it takes about 60 to 62 hours to 100%. Why is it so insanely long? That feels like a massive jump. Like you can just beat the game in 12 hours, or you can play it for 60 hours to get 100%. What are you doing? I've never played Mario Odyssey. Is it purely just collectibles? Is it the challenges you have to complete? Stuff like that, maybe? Because that's intense. I can't imagine that we're going to just hear, oh, yeah, by the way, if you want a 100% Astrobot, it's going to take like 60 plus hours. I just feel like that would be nuts. That would be quite shocking. Paul says there's a lot to do in Odyssey. Interesting. It also makes me wonder how fleshed out the DLC will be. The free DLC that they're going to drop, that they confirm they're going to drop after release. I'm assuming there's going to be more than one DLC. And I do wonder, in a way. I mean, we made a joke where it's like, oh, it's going to be a live service game. I mean, obviously, it's not a literal live service game, but I just do wonder if they're going to kind of, if they have a plan where it's like, we're going to support this game for at least a year straight or longer with just free content updates every couple of months to keep people coming back, but also to, to encourage further sales of the game. The only thing about it is if they're all going to be free, I would be kind of surprised about that. If every update we get, or every DLC, I should say, we get for Astrobot, I would be surprised if they're all free. But I'm here for it, man. Even if they want to do a paid DLC, I would pay for it if it felt like it was worth it. You know, the amount of content they're going to pack in, I'd absolutely pay for it. It'll be free if the game sells over 10 million units. Well, when it comes to how Astrobot is going to perform, I don't think it's going to reach the upper echelon of games like Spider-Man 2 or The Last of Us, or even like Ghost of Tsushima selling over 10 million. I don't think it's going to do that. I think it could do that under one circumstance, and that would be, truthfully, if it did come out and get insane review scores, like it is sitting at a 95 or 96 on Metacritic. Then I think that would change things. I think that would make a lot of people be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go buy this game now. You know, just easy. I'm just going to go buy it because it's like the best game ever made, apparently, or one of the best games ever made. I think that could potentially like skyrocket sales. But what I would love to know is what Sony's internal measurement of success is for this game. Like, is Sony looking at it as, if we sell 1 million units of Astrobot, it's a success? Is it higher than 1 million? Is it 1.5 million? Is it less than that? I feel like it's definitely not going to be less than 1 million. I think 1 million is probably the lowest they would go. But is it possible that Astrobot could go to 2 million, 3 million, more than 3 million? Is this possible? I think what Astrobot would need is some very, very, very positive word of mouth. Yeah, that's true. Let's not forget Astro's Playroom sold 60 million units. That's true. Yeah, there's no way Astrobot's going to catch up. Saying you're underestimating the people with kids and overestimating the power of Metacritic. Yeah, you probably are right about that as well. Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of parents maybe are going to just pick this up just because it seems like such a kid-friendly game. Maybe a lot of people are going to want to play with their family members. I mean, that's what I'm planning on doing. You know, Mrs. MEG, I know, is excited about. She's excited about Astrobot. Little MBG's excited. Well, I don't know if he's excited about it, but I'm thinking he will be. So I definitely fall in that category of, like, obviously I want to play it for myself and enjoy it for myself, but it's also just one of these games where it's like, it's cool to kind of be able to extend it to the family, you know, be like, hey, like, let's play this together, you know? It's pretty cool. This is why I hope it does well, because I would like to see more stuff like this. And I think in order for Astrobot, not in order for it, but I think what would help it, it's a better way to kind of word this. You know what, let me ask this question, because this kind of popped into my mind. Do you think it's possible that Astrobot could end up being a Game of the Year contender? Do you think it's possible? You're saying your son didn't care about the Lego Horizon game, but he was hyped about Astro. That's awesome. I see yes, no, and maybe. A couple of people are saying they think so. Alongside Helldivers 2. I think Helldivers 2 will definitely get some recognition this year at the Game Awards. I would be surprised if it didn't. You're saying throw up a poll. I can't put up the poll yet. I got to wait till the game's out and people can play it. Because obviously we can only speculate based off of what we've seen so far and what we've read. But I don't think we can say with 100% confidence either way. Based off of everything I'm seeing and everything I'm hearing, I think there is a chance, certainly a real chance, that if this game reviews well enough and the critics really adore it to a high degree, I think there's a real chance it could end up being a possible Game of the Year contender. But I don't know that it necessarily matters that much. I do think if Astrobot gets an incredible positive word of mouth going, right, I think that could elevate it. I do. I think it could really help it out. I think that it really starts when the reviews come out. And if it reviews much better than anybody was really expecting, that will spark a conversation. And it being so close to the Game Awards, a part of that conversation could potentially be, oh, is this going to be a Game of the Year contender? And I think if we are looking at that scenario when Astrobot releases, I think it's going to really help sales quite a bit. I think it's going to boost sales quite a bit. But yeah, holiday season, a lot of families looking to pick up games for their kids. There's that as well. So I think Astrobot has a lot going for it. Jay Shaka, you're saying bring back the Astrobot emoji. I will. I keep forgetting. My bad. Corey, you're saying LOL turned 39 today, and I'm hyped for this anyway. Oh, it's your Is it your birthday today, Corey? I mean, you said you turned 39 today, so I can only assume it's your birthday. If that's the case, happy birthday, man. Good stuff, dude. Well, I hope you have a good birthday. I appreciate you stopping by on your birthday. You gifted me. We should be gifting you something. I'm not finishing that message, Jay Shaco. I'm not doing it. Let me see here. Oops. Hold on. I got a direct donation, it seems. Sorry, I'm trying to find like a cake emoji or something. Some kind of birthday emoji. And I can't find any. Are you serious right now? There's no... No, this can't be real. I have to be missing it. You're not going to tell me there isn't... Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, found it. Took longer than it should have, but found it. All right. Corey says, in the name of boss. We have Waylark with another super chat, and then after I read your super chat, I'm going to read the direct donation as well. Waylark Redux says, love how MBG you went from Nintendo-style kid games don't appeal to you to now opening up to that kind of game. LOL. Yeah, well, the truth is, I have a weird thing going on with Nintendo where I don't know why I haven't been playing Nintendo for like the past 17 or 18 years. I don't know why. I just know that I grew up playing some Nintendo, and at around age, I think like 9, 10, 11, somewhere around there. I, I could have been playing when I was 12, but somewhere around there, I basically just stopped caring for one reason or another. And when I look at Nintendo's games, I don't think to myself, like, man, those look like kid games, and I don't want to play kid games. It's not that. I don't know what it is. Because I do own a Switch, but I don't ever pick up that Switch and just sit down and play it. I've only engaged with the Switch on a level of like it's like a social device for me, where if I have friends or family over, on rare occasion maybe we'll break out some Mario Party or some uh Smash Bros, something like that. But when it comes to like picking up a Switch and sitting down and playing like a Zelda or Pokemon or Mario or anything like that, I don't know. It just doesn't exist for me. And that's why I'm going to be paying very close attention to the next generation of Switch that should be revealed sometime this year, I guess. And it might be time for me to return, man. So it's not like I've ever had anything against kid games or like visually games that visually look like they're appealing to a younger audience. Dude, one of my favorite game series of all time, Plants vs. Zombies. Plants vs. Zombies. I like the original game. I like the sequel to the original game. I didn't like the fact it was mobile only and it basically became like kind of pay to win. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 1 and 2. Battle for Neighborville, which was not as good. But Garden Warfare 1 and 2, dude, these games were amazing. And I know for a fact that there are people that they look at those games like, oh, those are kids' games. I played Ratchet and Clank. I platinum Ratchet and Clank. So I wouldn't say it's more like it was ever these kid style games don't appeal to me. I think it's just been more along the lines of it really depends on where I am. It really depends on what's coming to me versus what I have to go to partake in. I don't know if I was on Xbox or if I was on Nintendo. Maybe if I was on Nintendo, Astrobot would appeal to me. But if I was like on Xbox, I don't know that Astrobot would be the game to just make me jump and say, I need to go buy a PlayStation 5 now to play Astrobot. It probably would have been a bunch of other different games. But yeah, I won't lie, man. Astro's Playroom was like the first time I played like a 3D platformer in many, many, many years. And I just kind of forgot, like, oh man, this style of game is very fun. It's been a long time. Your family enjoyed the hell out of GameCube's Mario Golf. Yeah, I think that essentially what Astrobot has done is it kind of rekindled something a little bit and brought me back to something that I haven't enjoyed in a long time. And so I think that's why I'm kind of gravitating so much towards Astrobot. But I do think that it's also going to facilitate me probably returning to Nintendo. I don't know if I'm going to be as into Nintendo as I was as a kid, but we'll see, man. I don't know what they're going to do with the Switch 2. So it's one of these situations where I could very well, start to expand this channel where it's not just going to be PlayStation. Like there are going to be times where I talk about Nintendo themed stuff. I don't know. I mean, that seems weird to think right now because I've like skipped the entire Switch generation mostly, but it's going to be a big deal and it's going to be something I'm paying very close attention to. So we'll see, man. We'll see. The sky's the limit, really. You're saying MBG, it's because the Switch is not as powerful of a console, so it puts you off slightly to weaker versions of games. I mean, yeah, kind of. That there's probably a little bit of truth to that. The Switch would never be like my main go-to console. But I do wonder if I do wonder if the Switch 2 will be much more appealing to me than the original Switch ever was. We're going to find out. But we have a direct donation from Moonshot, aka Josh's original account. And he says, I've got a prediction. I don't think there will be a September showcase. It's going to be another state of play, and I don't think we are going to officially hear about the Pro until next year. Seems like hopium with nothing concrete. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not feeling it. Interesting, Moonshot. Well, first off, thank you for the direct donation. Just another reminder for anybody who isn't aware, the pinned comment in the chat is a direct donation link. You can still leave a chat or a message, and it helps. Except 100% of what you donate goes directly to the content creator. But that's an interesting theory. I want to say it's a possibility. Yes. I know that it would immensely disappoint a lot of people, and it would also make people go, whoa, I thought the PS5 Pro was coming. And I think the PS5 Pro is coming no matter what, but is it possible it could get delayed? It is possible, yes. I think it would be kind of crazy if it got delayed, though, just because the PS5 Pro, if it comes out this November, is already coming out 1 year later than the PS4 Pro did. And I think that's kind of problematic, where how late in a generation can you release a Pro console without making people kind of question, like, is it even worth upgrading to this Pro console if I know I'm going to get a next generation console in just like 2 years? So I think pushing the release date to 2025, even if it was early 2025, it could happen. But I think it would be a mistake, just for the simple fact that at that point it feels like it's coming a little bit too late. I mean, I know it's like we're talking about the difference between 3 and 6 months, but still, that's a lot of time. That's a good chunk of time. So I guess maybe the only reason Sony would do that is if they felt that there weren't enough games ready to go for the PS5 Pro. That's another possibility, but just getting a state of play in September, it's possible. Yeah, I don't want to sit here and say that we are getting a showcase or we should expect a showcase. I think there's a lot of good reasons why there should be a showcase in September, but that doesn't mean there will be a showcase in September. So my recommendation to everybody would be expect anything. Have your hopes and dreams. There's nothing wrong with that, but expect anything and you should be okay. And we have Cypherpunk with another super chat who says, my favorite games are still all Nintendo games. I think a lot of people feel that way. You're definitely not the only one, Cypherpunk. I think a lot of people feel that way. For a lot of people, Nintendo is still their number one platform, the number one game maker for them. Lone Wolf Gamer says, MBG, I'm going to need your streams to keep me informed on PlayStation news. I'm having to sell my PS5 due to needing funds. I plan on getting another one, the PS5 Pro, later this year. Interesting. Well, I'll do my best, Lone Wolf Gamer. I'm going to try to have more news videos coming out as well that hopefully you can look forward to. Keep you up to date with what's going on with PlayStation news. But Dead by Daylight Lara Croft announcement. Not that you care about the game anymore, MBG. I still care about it. I've just overplayed it. You know what? I will say, speaking of Dead by Daylight, did you see that they just announced their 2v8 game mode? Two killers, 8 survivors. Yeah, that's coming out at the end of this month. That I'll definitely play. That sounds genuinely interesting. So I still do care about the game. I come to life. Yeah, it brings me to life, man. I am a little bit exhausted from it. I'm not going to lie. And we have Josh with a super chat. The same Josh. Josh, a.k.a. Moonshot. He says, prediction number 2, I think this is because the PlayStation 6 isn't coming till 25. So, Josh, you're saying you think the PlayStation 6... Oh, okay. All right, you have a correction here with a second super chat saying until 2030 due to extended game development time. That's also an interesting theory, Josh. I was going to say the PlayStation 6 definitely isn't coming next year. A PlayStation 6 in 2030, I think that's too late, honestly. I think the absolute latest we could see a PlayStation 6 is 2028. Even with the extended game dev time, because 2029, I mean, look, we are far enough out from these next generation consoles that it's a possibility. Again, we have to keep in mind all of these different scenarios are a possibility. It is possible that something could happen that makes it simply so Sony has to make that executive decision where it's like, listen, we didn't want to have to wait this long, but if we don't delay the release of the PlayStation 6 until 2029, we're not going to have a launch lineup, or we're going to have an extremely weak launch lineup. And that could be reason enough to make Sony say, okay, we got to pull that trigger. But it also depends on what's going on, right? The Switch 2 will be out. And by the time the PlayStation 6 comes out, we'll have a very good idea of the type of impact the Switch 2 is having. There's also a possibility that Microsoft could have their next generation Xbox console out. And by that point, Sony, I don't know that they would have much of a choice. But I do get where you're coming from, Josh. Because of how long the dev time is for a lot of the games that Sony likes to make, it does kind of make you question what a launch lineup for the PS6 is going to look like. Who's going to be ready to go within the first year and a half? I mean, they're figuring this stuff out now. You know, there is a possibility that games that were originally planned to be PS5 games are actually in the process of being moved over to PlayStation 6 games. We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay. Yeah, Josh, I do appreciate the super chats. I appreciate everybody dropping some super chats. Everybody who's doing so. Really helps the channel a lot. So yeah, listen, I think pretty much finished up with the first topic. We're going to move on to the second topic, which talks about Chinajoy and multiple PlayStation 5 games that are apparently going to be there and confirmed. So before we move on to that topic, guys, again, make sure you hit that like button. We're already sitting at 125 likes, so you're doing great today. I know that there's not a whole lot going on right now, so for those of you who are here, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for continually showing that support. But let's talk about Chinajoy. So I have an article here from Gamatsu. It says, Sony Interactive Entertainment announces Chinajoy 2024 lineup. Sony Interactive Entertainment has announced its lineup for Chinajoy 2024, which will run from July 26th to July 29th at Shanghai New International Expo Center in Shanghai, China. And they have an actual image here, an official PlayStation image. It says PlayStation Chinajoy 2024. A lot of it is in Chinese, so I can't read all of it, but they have like the whole list of games here. There are actually quite a few games listed here whose titles are in Chinese, but luckily I think Gamatsu has translated. So here are the games from PlayStation's China Hero project that are going to be part of Chinajoy 2024. AI Limit from Sense Games. Awaken Astral Blade. Astral. That's from ES Digital Games / Dark Pigeon Games. Now this one I'm interested in, and Sony is actually publishing this game called Convalaria. It's being developed by Longforce, long with 2 O's, but Sony is publishing this game, and this is one I'm actually interested in hearing about because if I'm not mistaken, this game Convalaria, I'll click on it here, Series, PlayStation China Hero Project. Publisher, Sony Interactive Entertainment. Developer, Long Force. Genre, multiplayer third-person shooter. Convaleria is a multiplayer third-person shooter video game developed by Long Force, published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. Hold on. Sorry about that. I keep having to adjust my microphone on the fly. I have to keep my microphone very close to my mouth right now. So sorry if it looks a little weird, but it says here, cruising through realities and fantasies, challenging the most dangerous enemies and adventurers to reveal those unknown episodes behind the shining memories. I'm looking for your steps in somnium, calling your name in the sea till the echo sinks. Oh man. Okay, this has to be some kind of translation because it's not giving me any idea of what the game is. But this game, Convaleria, has anybody here seen this game? I just want to know if anybody knows this game, Convaleria, because I've seen glimpses of gameplay and it actually looks relatively promising. And I think this is why Sony is choosing to actually publish this game. It does seem like it's going to be a live service title. You're saying no, show it? Okay, I'll see if I can bring it up. While I do that, though, we have Champagne Picks. Member for 5 months says, is Helldivers 2 going to Game Pass? Have you heard anything? I have not heard anything. I'm going to assume that Helldivers 2 is never going to Game Pass. There is no word on Helldivers 2 going to Xbox, let alone Game Pass. I mean, I don't want to say that it's impossible that Helldivers 2 could ever release on Xbox, but I'm going to say that as of right now, Sony isn't even releasing a game like Horizon Lego Adventures on Xbox. So I'm going to say I don't think Sony has any intention of releasing any of their games on Xbox anytime remotely soon. And then we have Piper saying the PlayStation 5 Pro coming this year. What's the date? Well, the last rumor we had about the PS5 Pro, the last reputable and credible rumor when it comes to a release date, came from Tom Henderson. Tom Henderson has been spot on with every one of his PlayStation leaks. His sources are very good. And he was the one who actually first revealed or leaked the PS5 Pro to begin with. He said that internally, Sony is targeting a November 2024 release for the PS5 Pro. He didn't give a specific day, but they're targeting November. So as of right now, that's what we know. And I do trust Tom Henderson 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing from Tom Henderson very soon, now that we are getting closer to the supposed announce/release date. I imagine he's probably doing a little bit more digging, looking to get some updates, and he will inform us when, and let us know if that's still the plan or not. Let me see if I can show you guys this game, though. Convaleria gameplay. So I forgot that Sony actually released a full-blown trailer for this. Let me bring it up. We'll just do a quick reaction. So this game is worth reacting to and showing you because, again, this is one of the few, because there are not that many, Sony published Chinajoy games. Let me just move this over here so I can show you guys.
当我第一次踏上这片土地的时候，我还不知道何处是尽头。
So actually, I'm going to, just because I can't risk it. I highly doubt the music is could get me in any kind of trouble with copyright, but just in case, I'm going to mute it. So apologies for that. If this was like a members lounge, I wouldn't care. But yeah, it basically looks like a third person co-op shooter. There does seem to be something missing here with this gameplay, though. This trailer was released, I think, a year or two ago. It does look pretty generic overall, but my guess is that Sony believes that this game could have some kind of potential as a live service. So they're like, all right, let's sign these guys. You know, they're a Chinese studio. Let's bring them on board. It doesn't look too bad. I'm just kind of interested to see how a Sony published game like this does. It reminds me of that game, The First Descendant, which just came out. I also wonder if this is going to be a 2024 or 2025 game. I'm thinking it's going to be a 2025 game. But this will be at Chinajoy. So, what did you guys think? Saying First Descendant bosses 10 times better. Kind of reminds you of Anthem. Yeah, it does have this kind of generic look to it where it doesn't seem to be doing anything too innovative at all. Actually, it looks like there's no innovation going on there, but it does look like it has the potential to maybe be a kind of, again, a type of First Descendant type game where it just kind of it drops and it's like, oh, there's this new third person co-op shooter where you fight bosses together, you unlock new weapons, so on and so forth. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they maybe made some changes. Let me fix my screen here. And let me see when this trailer actually came out. So this trailer came out December 5th, 2022. So it's actually 2 years old, almost 2 years old. So it makes me wonder if the game looks much different now or much better. I mean, it looked like it was certainly in a playable state. And this is also what makes me wonder if this is going to be a 2024 game. Because it's been a while since we've heard from this. But yeah, this is a Sony published Chinajoy game, or China Hero Project game, I should say. But if we continue down the list here, let me get back to it. So after Convaleria, another PlayStation China Hero project is Daba Land of Water Scar. That's made by Darkstar. Evo Tinction. I hate that name. That's by Spikewave Games. And Exile Edge. Enigmatrix is the name of the studio. So those are all of the PlayStation China Hero titles that are slated for Chinajoy 2024. I have seen some people talk about this game Evo Tinction. I'll have to look into that one because I'm not familiar with it. Like, the name I've heard multiple times. Sony is not publishing that one, though. Interestingly enough, the only China Hero project that Sony is actually publishing is Convalaria. But continuing with Gamatsu here, so there are also going to be first-party PlayStation games that are going to be at Chinajoy 2024, Astrobot, Helldivers 2, Horizon Forbidden West, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Really interesting that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is going to be there, just because it's like, I guess it's a game that they want to show off to Chinese gamers that maybe are like, hey, you know, this is one of the games we released this generation. A lot of third-party games. I'm not going to name all the third-party games that are going to be there. But one of the third-party games that people are actually paying attention to, well, there's a couple here. Infinity Nikki, that was a game that was shown off at the latest PlayStation State of... Sorry. Infinity Nikki was a game that was shown off at the latest PlayStation State of Play, and it was actually very well received. A lot of people are actually excited for this game. I'm not looking forward to it myself, but it was the most viewed trailer out of the State of Play from May. So that's going to be there to some capacity. But another game that's going to be there that a lot of people are very much excited about, Phantom Blade Zero. Phantom Blade Zero, I don't know if you guys have been watching gameplay of this title, but it's looking really, really good. It's looking really good. And one of the most interesting things about Phantom Blade Zero is, as people are going hands-on with it, they're realizing that it does, like, there was this kind of fear that, looking at the way the combat was in Phantom Blade Zero, there was this kind of fear that it's actually not going to play that well. Is it a PlayStation exclusive? Phantom Blade Zero is not... So the best way to word it is Phantom Blade Zero is only releasing on the PlayStation 5 console. So, I mean, technically, yes, but they don't have a deal with Sony. They're just basically choosing not to release it on Xbox or Switch. So it's just going to be on PS5 and PC. So yeah, effectively. But either way, Phantom Blade Zero looks awesome. Exclusive or not, it was one of the standout games from PlayStation's last proper showcase in 2023. And we've seen a lot more from it since. But the development team for Phantom Blade Zero has been very much focused on making it clear to people that, like, it's not all for show. Like, the game actually requires skill and it feels as good to play as it looks. So I think that's really good because, yeah, sometimes with these trailers we see, when they seem a little too good to be true, you always got to be a little bit wary of, like, okay, but how's it really going to feel to play? And people have went hands-on with it. There's a demo, and I'm assuming that's what's going to show up at Chinajoy with Phantom Blade Zero, is they're going to have another, a hands-on demo that people can play. People have been asking for a public demo, and they said that, right now they're not ready to release one, but I think they kind of made it sound like it's something they're considering and working on, and they are going to do that. But yeah, Phantom Blade Zero is going to be at Chinajoy, so there's a chance we could get more, feedback from people going hands-on with it. When will it be released? I'm thinking it's clearly going to be a 2025 game. I don't think Phantom Blade Zero is going to launch in 2024. I think the most we could hope for is some kind of public demo in 2024. Yeah, Rudy, that's important to point out as well. It's not a Souls game. Phantom Blade Zero is not a Souls game. So that's going to be there. But there's another game here that I'm actually not familiar with, but I did see people talking about it. It's called Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves, I don't know how to say it. It's from Kuro Games, open world action RPG. Based off of the image I'm seeing, it kind of has an anime style. Wuthering Waves is an open world action role-playing game. It's a story-rich open-world game with a high degree of freedom. You wake from your slumber as a rover, greeted by an expansive new world filled with novel sights and newfangled tech. Welcome to the new world, rover. This is an age of struggle. I guess they have a kind of story breakdown here. But I did see people talking about this game. Again, I know nothing about it, but there seems to have been some excitement. You're saying it's a Genshin clone? Okay. It's a gacha game? All right. Yeah. So it's one of those types. So I did see people kind of hyping up the fact that it's going to show up here. And then at the very bottom here, it says Koei Tecmo announced that Dynasty Warriors Origins producer Tomohiko Sho will appear during the Sony Interactive Entertainment booth official live stream to introduce the game with actual gameplay footage. So, yeah, Sony has a pretty significant presence at Chinajoy, and obviously, you know, it's not the most exciting thing. A lot of the stuff here, like, there's not going to be some kind of showcase or you know, a bunch of new games announced. At least it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like they're going to have major new game announcements here. It seems like it's basically going to be updates on a lot of titles that we already know about. But I am hopeful that at the very least, maybe we get some new info on this game, Convaleria. Because I can't say I'm like super excited for it or anything like that. Because, you know, you watch the gameplay, you look at the trailer, it's like, okay, it looks pretty generic. It looks pretty similar to a lot of other games we've seen time and time again, but it makes me think maybe there's something there. The fact that Sony's going out of their way to publish it. And again, it's been multiple years since we've seen the game, so maybe we'll get some kind of significant update on that. Maybe we'll get an update on Phantom Blade Zero, or just some new gameplay of it, or at the very least, some new impressions of the gameplay. But yeah, this is something that Sony started a couple years ago, the China Hero Project. We know that they've expanded this into other regions of the world, where there's like India Hero, and I think they're doing something in Africa now. So they're really looking to expand PlayStation in a significant way globally, which is good. And I think that the China Hero Project reveals that we can see some pretty significant things come out of it. There have already been multiple China Hero projects released. But Ballad of Antara looked awesome till they said it's going to be a live service. Oh yeah, I had no idea. If that's true, I had no idea. I know what game you're talking about. I thought it looked pretty good. Yeah, that was at the latest State of Play. A2, you're saying it's smart of them. Developer talent is not only limited to West or Japan. Yeah, I agree. You do have to wonder, you know, how much development talent is out there globally that is just going unnoticed, and no one, you know, no one has any clue that, oh, there are some really talented devs here making these different types of games. But it is smart. All right, guys. So that's going to wrap up our second topic of discussion. And we are going to move on to the next topic. Before we do, once again, guys, be sure to hit that like button. Really appreciate you guys continuing to hit that like button. We're already at nearly 150 likes, which, considering, again, not a whole lot of people here today, not a whole lot of exciting topics, that's actually pretty good. So thank you, guys. Keep it up. Let's see if we can get that up to 175. Read 'em and Weep says, full developer build of Space Marine 2 apparently leaked. Yeah, I saw that. That sounds very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. That's a game I'm excited for, though. I'm going to be picking that up day one. I see somebody saying the Concord Beta is down. It's not down, it's over. The Concord Beta ended. The next time we're going to see Concord come back is for the Open Beta, I believe, starting the 21st. Or actually, no. I think it ends on the 21st. I think it's coming back this weekend. We have Feral Flame here with a super chat. Thank you, buddy, saying, I wish Latin America could be in the Hero project. Well, it's possible that Sony could extend this. You know, they could. I mean, I don't think anybody necessarily expected them to expand it to India or to Africa. So it's definitely a possibility that they could expand it to other regions. In fact, I think they will. I don't think they're just going to stop with China, India, or Africa. I think that they're going to go to other territories and other regions as well. So, Feral Flame, don't give up hope. But the next topic we're going to talk about revolves around Sony's Japan studio, which no longer exists. The studio was shut down a couple of years back, but we have some new information about what was going on at the time of this studio's closure. Sony didn't really say much about it. Nobody really said much about it. We just found out it was closing due to a restructuring and reorganization. But now we have a little bit of new information. It's nothing mind-blowing, but just something that I think people are going to be interested in hearing about if you cared about Sony's Japan studio. So this is being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle. Silent Hill and Gravity Rush creator Kichiro Toyama has told VGC that Sony wanted its now defunct Japan studio to move towards big-budget games. Japan Studio was PlayStation's oldest first-party developer, and its closure/reorganization in 2021 after 30 years of operation took fans by surprise. In a new interview with VGC, Toyama said that he personally wanted to make original creative games rather than be bound by massive budgets. That's not the direction Sony wanted to go in. Toyama departed Japan Studio shortly before its closure and ended up founding Bokeh Game Studio, where he's making the upcoming Slitterhead. With Sony, there was an increasing motive to make more highly budgeted games, and it wanted to go that way with the Japan Studio brand, Toyama said. My motive was always to create original games. I feel I can do that. I feel I can do this without a massive budget. Japan Studio was behind some of PlayStation's most beloved IPs, but towards the end of its life, it struggled to make commercially successful titles, with a few exceptions like Astro. Some of its creative endeavors, like Gravity Rush, didn't quite make their mark despite positive reception. So this is pretty interesting, and I think it reveals... There's a fly in here. Sorry. I think it reveals something important about what went down with Japan Studio. It is worth noting that this article reminds us that Kichiro Toyama, the head of Japan Studio, he actually departed the studio before it shut down. And if we read between the lines here, the reason why I say I think we have to read between the lines is because I did see some people basically saying that this seems to not make much sense, right? He is saying that with Sony, there was an increased motive to make highly budgeted games, and they wanted to do that with Sony's Japan studio. They wanted Sony Japan to make high budgeted games. But he says his motive was always to create original games, and he can do that without a massive budget. This is fascinating because some people are basically saying, well, that doesn't seem like a very good reason to leave a studio because you can still make original games with a bigger budget. I think there's a little bit of reading between the lines here that needs to occur. And I think that comes in the form of kind of realizing that I think where this is actually leaning is Sony basically wanted Japan studio to work on something that's more of a guarantee or less of a risk. And I think really we can replace the words, let's see, budget with less original game or less risky type game because the budget's going to be so high. And I think what Toyama is saying here is that he wants to be able to have the freedom to do really weird and potentially not so widely accepted stuff that's not going to be as much of a commercial hit. And he wants to do that with a smaller budget because I guess he's ultimately feeling like the bigger budget is going to make sure that he can't do that. So I do understand both sides of it here. I think from the creative side, there's just a truth here that's being spoken, and that is that when your game is going to be very expensive and the budget's going to be very high, there's going to be a certain expectation from Sony where you're gonna have to do a couple of things that would be considered more mainstream, because we can't just let you go. Like, the only creative that Sony would probably let do that, and they already did, is Hideo Kojima. Like, Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions is probably one of the only studios that can just kind of go to any company and just be like, I'm going to make what I want, and you're going to fund it. And they're going to be like, yes. And it will be big budget. Yes. I don't think Sony Japan Studio or the talent there, or, Kichiro Toyama, I don't think that they had that type of pull. And also the fact that Sony owns them. I think that it just basically boils down to, well, you know what? There's another angle to this as well. Maybe it's that with a bigger budget, you're also locked into a much longer development cycle. More than likely, you're locked into a longer development cycle. See, something that Jim Ryan did when he was the head of PlayStation, for better or for worse, is he went to every studio and said, you're going to make AAA games. We're not doing AA games anymore. We're not doing small games. We're doing AAA games. Even when you look at Astrobot, let's not forget, Team Asobi was created underneath Jim Ryan. Astrobot was greenlit underneath Jim Ryan. Astrobot is a AAA game. It's not the biggest AAA game, but it's a AAA game. Every studio underneath Sony was going to work on AAA titles, and it seems to me that the reason why Sony Japan ended up shuttering was they didn't want to do that, and Sony couldn't necessarily force them. And it sounds like it resulted in essentially Sony making the decision that, well, we have a very disorganized team here that doesn't want to make the type of games that, we would like them to make. And the talent is beginning to leave, so we should just shutter it. I think it was a big mistake, only because I think, well, let me rephrase that. Maybe it's not as big of a mistake as we think, because we did get Team Asobi out of it. So Team Asobi is carrying the torch of what was PlayStation Sony Japan Studio. So in a way, it is still kind of alive, because yes, the original concept of Astrobot came from Sony Japan Studio. But I think what's a shame here is that maybe Sony shouldn't have given up so quickly on shuttering, or given up so quickly on the studio and shuttering them, because maybe some of the talent left, but the idea of transforming Sony Japan Studio into a AAA high-budget developer in Japan, I think that still could have been achievable. I think it would have required a bit of rebuilding, certainly some investment, a little bit of faith. They would have had to hunt for talent in Japan, but I just think I would rather have seen Sony Japan. And maybe there are PlayStation fans who disagree with this, because when we think about what people loved about Sony Japan, they loved the kind of smaller to mid-size, very unique type of games. But unfortunately, those games did not succeed commercially. So maybe what I'm about to say, a lot of PlayStation fans or some PlayStation fans would disagree with, but I would have preferred to see Sony Japan make the conversion to a big budget AAA game where, yes, we are working on a big, massive AAA title that's going to be done in 5 to 6 years, a new IP or something like that, maybe a new horror IP, something along those lines. I think that would have been much better than just seeing the studio shut down, because it would have at least they would have lived on in that way. And there would always be the possibility that under new leadership in the future, Sony Japan Studio could ultimately revert back to what they once were if their AAA endeavors didn't really work out, or if it just, if they made one big AAA game, it did pretty well, but then they're like, okay, can we go back to making smaller to mid-sized games now? Maybe underneath new leadership, they would say, yeah, we want you to do that. It's water under the bridge now, but it is unfortunate that it unfolded this way, and it's just interesting to get this kind of information directly from the source, directly from the head developer at the studio, basically saying that, yeah, Sony wanted us to make big budget games, and I didn't want to make big budget games. I wanted to make smaller games. I wanted to make more creative games. And if you look at Slitterhead, I mean, look, I don't know how much excitement there is for Slitterhead, but yeah, I don't think Sony would have said yes to that game. I think the only way Sony would have said yes to a game like Slitterhead is if it's like, okay, we like the concept, we like the idea, but we got to make it full AAA. We got to make it have some of the best graphics. Has to have mocap. I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh here because Sony isn't that crazy. Like, they will give more freedom than that. But that kind of does, in a way, it's a very simplified way of, I think, communicating like what Sony would have liked to see from Sony Japan Studio, from Kichiro Toyama. And he's just like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I just want to make this game, and it's not going to have the best graphics, and it's not going to have, it's not going to have that same level of polish and prestige that, not prestige, that's the wrong word, polish, and I guess you could say triple anus, right? That most other PlayStation studios, if not all of them, are currently putting out there or striving for. So it doesn't necessarily give us the full picture. It doesn't give us 100% confirmation of this is why Sony shut down Japan Studio. But what it does do is give us a little bit more insight into what was going on behind the scenes and what Sony was asking of them and why specifically the head of the studio left. There's one other thing I want to mention here that still puzzles me about the closure of Japan Studio, and it's from the support studio aspect. Sony Japan basically co-developed Bloodborne. I do wonder why Sony didn't decide to maybe relegate Japan Studio to being a support studio, essentially, which, I think still would have disappointed a lot of people, but it would have kept the studio like alive. It maybe tells me that studio could have been way, way more disorganized behind the scenes than we could have imagined. Maybe it was a total madhouse, and Sony was just like, shut it down now. It's a possibility, but you're saying they moved to XDev. Yeah, that's true. I guess in a way that kind of did happen, didn't it? Yeah, you're right. Basically, that is what happened. Because you're right, I forgot about XDev. And a lot of Sony Japan Studios devs did move over to either Team Asobi or XDev. So it sounds like they were shuttered, but they were essentially split into two. A portion of the devs were moved over to XDev to be on a support team, and the other half was moved over to Team Asobi to continue working on Astro. So that makes sense. So I guess that is basically what happened. And I guess in that case, there wouldn't really be a place for somebody like Kichiro Toyama. Yeah, Team Asobi used to be under Japan Studio. How is Media Molecule still alive? How is 343 still alive? Yeah, I mean, you do have to wonder, like, what warrants some of these teams that have definitely messed up in some way. We're going to stay. We're going to keep you. I think it's just a matter of, like, something's got to go. What's going to go, you know? Can't imagine it's easy necessarily making those decisions, but it is true. In the business world, it is true that somebody's got to make those decisions. It is a business at the end of the day, and it needs to be treated as such. You're saying Sony Japan's internal studios are kind of weak, to be honest. They were carried by external projects, other than Team Asobi's efforts. Their games have been Knack 1, 2, and Gravity Rush 2. Yeah. That's something else I see people kind of bring up is they're like, I can't believe Sony actually shut down Japan Studio. But then there are people that kind of point out, like, listen, like, have you seen the way their games have sold? Their games were basically failures, and didn't make them money, and probably lost them money, like, multiple times. So we can't say that Sony didn't give them a chance. And that's what I've heard too. I've heard Gravity Rush and Gravity Rush 2 are very, very good, but it just sounds like they just didn't do what they needed to do commercially in order to justify their existence. Or certainly a third one. Siren was their best known game. Some people think Siren might be coming back at what's the studio? Fire Sprite. Yeah, some people believe that Fire Sprite is actually working on Siren, but I don't think so. I don't think Siren's coming back. I think Siren's gone for good, truthfully. But yeah, I just wanted to be sure to let you guys know about this small but interesting piece of information we're getting about the now defunct Sony Japan studio. I'll never forget the reactions from people when this happened. It was pretty intense, and there are some people that still, have not forgiven Sony for that. But there's not much that can be done. What's done is done. It's now water under the bridge. I just wonder if we're going to get any other insight or any other information about this going forward. But, guys, with that being said, we have one or two bonus topics here that I want to go over with you guys. Again, nothing too major, but just some random stuff that some of you might be interested in. We're going to go over these bonus topics, and when we finish these bonus topics, we're going to move over to the members lounge for a little while, and me and the members are going to hang out there. So as we are going through these bonus topics, guys, just keep in mind, feel free to gift memberships, even if it's just a single membership, or become a member so you can hang out with us in the members lounge. And yeah, so we're going to start here. Oh, and hit that like button for me as well. We're almost at 175. We're going to start here with Crash Bandicoot 5 being canceled, apparently. So this is being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle. It says Toys for Bob artist Nicholas Cole has revealed that Crash Bandicoot 5 was in development at a different studio, but was canceled. The revelation came during a conversation about a separate project that Cole was working on, which was recently canceled after 3 years of work. Over on X, Cole was mourning the loss of something called Project Dragon, which was canceled after internal attempts to save it failed. The word dragon led fans to assume that it was a Spyro game that Toys for Bob had to cancel, prompting Cole to clarify that it was not a Spyro game, and it wasn't in development at Toys for Bob either. He then dropped the bomb about Crash 5 unprompted. So if we look over at the string of tweets, Nicholas Cole says, well, our canceled project of the last 3 years is officially truly dead as of today. Internal attempts to save it failed, and the embargo on the whole body of portfolio work has been lifted. RIP Project Dragon. Brace yourselves for the largest ever art bomb of work I loved. Somebody says, I'm going to assume it's called Project Dragon because Spyro was going to be in the game. like with those concept art pieces we saw in CT Rumble. He responds by saying Project Dragon is a totally different canceled project from a different studio. If this is Spyro, says another person, I'm going to be the most pissed off man who ever lived. Then Nicholas Cole says it's not Spyro, but someday folks will hear about the Crash 5 that never was, and it's going to break hearts. The article finishes up by saying it's unclear how long Crash 5 was in development, where it was being made, and why it was canceled. There is some speculation that Crash Bandicoot 4 sales may have contributed to Crash 5's demise. While it's true that the game didn't quite see the same success as the Insane trilogy did, design director Toby Schatt previously, I don't know if his last name is Schatt. I may have said that wrong. Maybe it's Shad? Shad? I don't know. I'm just going to say Schatt. Toby Schatt previously revealed that Crash Bandicoot 4 was well received and sold over 5 million copies. So, guys, just a random bomb being dropped here by a developer on X revealing that Crash Bandicoot 5 was in the works and was canceled. And that's all he says. We're just basically getting confirmation that 2 projects were canceled. And I'm curious what you guys think. Are you surprised to hear that Crash 5 was canceled? I was not surprised to hear that because I remember, I think, hearing that Crash Bandicoot 4 did not sell well. And I remember there was just like kind of talk that, oh yeah, it's going to end after this. What's really, really weird to me, though, here's what's most bizarre to me, is that something like Crash Team Rumble, what was the game called? It was this live service attempt with a Crash Bandicoot game, and they were going to try to have like seasons and whatnot, and it came out not that long ago, but it's basically already dead. And yet another game to add to the failed live service graveyard. But with something like the Crash Bandicoot IP, which is a very well-known and established IP, it's kind of crazy to think that, at least for now, this is where it's going to end, right? This failed live service attempt that was clearly never going to work. And it's, we'll see if Microsoft wants to do more with Crash in the future. And to be clear, it doesn't say Crash Team Rumble, that's what it was called. I don't think Microsoft had anything to do with this. It's possible that maybe Microsoft was the one to cancel it, but it sounds more like Activision had already canceled this Crash Bandicoot 5 game well before Microsoft acquired them. So I'm assuming this is kind of like something that happened a little while ago. Like, you almost have to wonder if they were going to do a Crash 5, and then instead they were like, no, we need a live service Crash game. And then they canceled Crash 5. You're going to make Crash, Team Rumble, and that's going to fail, and then that'll be it. So knowing that Activision Blizzard is now owned by Microsoft owns the Crash Bandicoot IP, they could revive it. They could do something more. I think that would be wise of Microsoft. You think about how Crash Bandicoot has roots at PlayStation. It would be incredibly ironic for Microsoft to be the one in the future to be like, here's a brand new single player Crash Bandicoot game. I think something like that probably would be multi-platform. So maybe they could revive that, but right now it sounds like Crash Bandicoot is on ice. It sounds like we're going to have to just look. Now, I'm not even the biggest fan of Crash Bandicoot. I mean, when I was playing on the PS1, it was one of my most played games, but I can't say that I followed Crash throughout the years. Like, I didn't buy Crash 4. So, I can't say that I helped save this franchise. But the thing that is a little bit surprising to me is that the director of the game, or the design director, did say that it did do well and it sold over 5 million copies. And that's what's a little strange to me, is like, I guess that's not enough. Like, selling over 5 million copies of Crash 4 wasn't enough to justify making a 5th game. if I'm not mistaken, the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy sold like over 20 million copies. So maybe that's where things got kind of messed up, is that game sold incredibly well and did massive numbers. So the expectation was, okay, well, Crash 4 is also going to do incredible numbers, like well beyond 5 million. It's going to be at minimum 10 million seller. And then it doesn't. It does half that. You can kind of see where maybe you can kind of see the, the trajectory that basically led to something like Crash 5 being canceled. But to me, the most depressing part about this, hands down, is seeing Crash turned into a live service game that just went out to die. And that for at least now, and for who knows how long, that's going to be the last time we see him. Like, I'm not even the biggest fan of Crash Bandicoot, and that depresses me because it's like, whose idea was that? I just feel like that's where you see the blatant greed come in, where it's like, no, there should be no live service Crash Bandicoot game. That's not what this should be, ever. Go make a new IP and make it live service. Don't take Crash and make it a live service. I just don't see why that would need to be a thing. But either way, this is where it is. I just thought that was a kind of random news story that just popped up out of nowhere. Because I can't say I was really wondering a lot. Like, I wasn't sitting here thinking, I wonder what's going on with Crash Bandicoot. I mean, maybe the last time I thought about Crash Bandicoot was when Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, because you just got to wonder, like, oh, now Microsoft owns them. What will they do? We'll see. We'll find out. But speaking of Microsoft-owned IP, I do have one other bonus topic that I want to cover with you guys. And it's actually about Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We have some new information here that I think it is going to be relevant to PlayStation players. I mean, Black Ops 6 is going to be one of the biggest games on PlayStation. So this is coming from PlayStation Lifestyle. PlayStation has finally lost its exclusive Call of Duty content, starting with the upcoming Call of Duty Black Ops 6 beta early access. Treyarch has announced dates and times for the upcoming multiplayer beta, which will kick off in August and run for 2 consecutive weekends. The Black Ops 6 beta early access will kick off on August 30th, 2024, and run until September 4th. Early access is open to all those who have pre-ordered the game, irrespective of their platform. However, there is a perk exclusive to Game Pass subscribers in that they can partake in early access whether they pre-ordered or not. The second weekend beta is open to all players and will take place between September 6th and September 10th. September 9th. As for what the beta will include, Treyarch says that it will allow players to go hands-on with the incredible new Omni Movement system and other gameplay innovations across a variety of brand new core maps. Additionally, the tests will let players build their own loadouts, access a variety of weapons, equipment, and perks, and drop in across a number of modes. So, yeah, this is interesting. We are finally seeing Call of Duty relinquished from its exclusivity. Now, I have to say, I think both Microsoft and Sony are equally guilty in this area, where back during the Xbox 360 days, starting with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Microsoft started making these deals for the DLC packs where you get them 30 days early on Xbox, and then eventually it did lead into the betas and early access to the betas and DLC and stuff like that. But then, because the Xbox One struggled and the PS5 was the market leader, Activision switched sides. They went to PlayStation. Then PlayStation started doing that for like the next decade. And I will say, by the end of the run with Call of Duty, like last year with Modern Warfare 3 and the year prior to that with Modern Warfare 2, and it just started to get pretty nonsensical. I feel like the whole idea of early access to the beta and what Sony was doing where there's exclusive operators, this started to feel pretty bad to me, because I'm like, I just don't think this is the way to go. So I am actually happy to see that Call of Duty is going to exist in this place now where it doesn't matter where you're playing. As long as you pre-order the game, you're going to get early access to the beta. That's the way it always should have been. And hopefully Microsoft sticks with that. Hopefully they don't ever go back on their word and, switch it over and be like, actually, but it is interesting. There is this kind of caveat thrown in here where if you are a Game Pass subscriber, you don't have to pre-order it. So it's separate. It's completely separate from the consoles and any type of exclusivity. But it is interesting that that's like, I think the first time we're seeing something like that implemented. But yeah, I'm curious, how many of you guys are going to be trying out Call of Duty Black Ops 6 this year? It does seem like there is... Oh, you know what? I didn't even think of that. You're saying Xbox dropping the Call of Duty beta right when Astro launches on September 6th. You're right. I didn't think about that. Damn, dude. I don't think it's going to interfere with it, but interesting. It does seem like there is more excitement for Call of Duty this year than there has been in a little while, because I think people are excited to see Treyarch. I think Treyarch is saying a lot of good things that people want to hear. I'm going to try the beta, and I'm probably going to get it. Truthfully, it would be easy for me to say right now, like, yeah, I'm not going to play Call of Duty, but I like Treyarch. I've always liked Black Ops, and I'm probably going to get caught up in that tidal wave when it inevitably comes around. But I am interested in this omnidirectional movement, and this is something that I did also want to tell you guys. We are getting confirmation that you will not be able to turn off omnidirectional movement. This is coming from Gaming Bolt. It says Treyarch recently announced multiplayer beta dates for Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Though its exact content is unknown, players can try out new mechanics like omni movement and intelligent movement. Unfortunately, they will not be able to turn off the former, as confirmed by Associate Design Director Matt Scrontz. Omni movement is a core foundational feature that cannot be disabled by a player, he said in the first episode of the Call of Duty podcast. However, the team is working to ensure one can hold their own if they don't use it. We've been conscious of ensuring we're not widening the skill gap too much. If you want to slow down, you can still be successful. You just may not look as cool, and that's fine. As for the new intelligent movement, it provides 3 assist settings for sprint, mantle, and crouch. You can choose whether to use these, but they're each tunable to one's preference. And it says here that Black Ops 6 is some of the features that have been confirmed: a new campaign, 16 maps in multiplayer, and the return of the classic prestige system, and a new round-based zombies experience. So it seems like a lot of people are excited for the new omnidirectional movement in Call of Duty Black Ops 6. However, I do wonder if there are people that were kind of waiting for this confirmation or not. Like, are you going to be able to turn it off? It sounds like you can't disable it, but the way he's talking about it is like you can play regularly, like slower paced, and not make it so movement based. And he's like, this developer's claiming you can still hold your own and do fine. So it's like not something you have to leverage or utilize in order to do well, which I guess makes sense. And I guess it also makes sense that it does make sense that you wouldn't be able to disable it. Rudy, you're saying omni movement is not new to shooters, LOL. It's not new to shooters, no. It's definitely something that's existed for a very long time. And it's funny because for me, I think of Max Payne, specifically Max Payne 3. Max Payne 3 did have a multiplayer, and it was all about omnidirectional movement, and it was amazing, honestly. Max Payne 3 was an incredible game, like from top to bottom. So what is interesting is this is the first time we're going to see movement like this in a Call of Duty setting. And I'm not surprised, honestly, because if you've seen the movement in recent Call of Duties, there are always like these videos kind of trending on the internet of people making fun of some of the movement that people can pull off in this game where it just looks ridiculous and not fun. And so I guess them like kind of expanding and opening it up and being like, all right, let's do omni movement, omnidirectional movement. Let's see what we can do there. I'm curious to see how it turns out, because if you think about it, this omnidirectional movement system could be one of the biggest changes we've seen fundamentally in Call of Duty ever. in the multiplayer space. I don't know. That's why I'm going to try out the beta and see for myself uh, what it's like. But I just wanted to let anybody know who's planning on playing Black Ops 6 that you cannot turn that off. But here's another thing we learned about Call of Duty Black Ops 6 multiplayer specifically. We learned in this Call of Duty podcast, you will not be able to loop your kill streaks like you could in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. So essentially what this means is if you have 3 kill streaks and you unlock all 3 and you don't die and you're still going on like a 10, 12, 15 kill streak, you're not going to be able to loop them. The only way you're going to be able to get your kill streaks back is you have to die and then you start over. This seems to be frustrating some players. Some players seem to be very unhappy that Treyarch is making this decision, and they're hoping that they reverse course here. But apparently the developer that confirmed this said that this is what they're going with because they feel that a lot of players actually don't like being able to loop kill streaks, and that it essentially creates kill streak spam, which can in turn hurt the moment-to-moment gunplay. And I think that logic holds up. There's no denying that if you're playing a match of Call of Duty and you're doing really, really well and you're looping those kill streaks and you're just decimating the other team and you just keep it going and going and going until the match ends, you feel like a god. You feel incredible. But I can also see, because I've been on the other side of that many times, where if you're on the losing team or the struggling team and you're up against people who are just frankly much better than you, it's bad enough that you're getting, wrecked in each gunfight just because their skill level is higher than you. But then it just feels like it's adding insult to injury that they're just able to constantly loop their kill streaks and just dump on you the entire game. And that's it. And I understand both sides of it. But I don't think it's a bad decision. I think it's fine. I'm totally fine with that because I like the idea of like if you unlock 3 kill streaks and you did that well and you went on a tear, you still get to use those kill streaks. But then when it's over, it's just about gunplay. And I think that this should make it so that there is more of an emphasis on the actual raw moment-to-moment shooting gunplay, and not so much on, hopefully, if anything, hopefully it discourages camping as well. Because the fact that you could loop kill streaks in previous Call of Duty games, I think that did lead to a lot of people camping, where it's like, okay, I just cycled through all 3 of my kill streaks. I'm going to stay in this corner because I want to do it again. I want this streak to end, and I want to get these kill streaks and let them do the work for me. So I think it's a good choice overall, the more I think about it. But Call of Duty has skill-based matchmaking. Yeah, that's true. That's true. If anything, this will just make that even more refined. Kill streaks is one of the reasons you don't like Call of Duty. Capono says, I'm ready to see MBG excited to play Call of Duty again. Yeah, I think I've just accepted that I'll never feel the same way about Call of Duty. Like, I'm trying to just completely remove myself from the nostalgia factor. I'm trying to do that more and more these days with games. I think that's a problem I have. I think it's a problem a lot of gamers have, where we just hold on to the nostalgia. And I'm just ready to accept that this is a new era for Treyarch, a new era for Black Ops, and there's a chance I could play it in the beta and I'm like, oh, I'm not digging this, I'm not feeling it, or I could love it. But I'm definitely going in with an open mind. I really did like Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I think that was the last Call of Duty I thoroughly enjoyed and put a lot of hours into that. I enjoyed the zombies. I enjoyed the campaign. I really enjoyed the multiplayer. So we'll see what they do with this. But yeah, it's fast approaching. Stream your Call of Duty gameplay. We need to see that. Yeah, maybe we could. I am planning on doing more gameplay streams. I feel bad. This is why I don't like streaming games when I first play them, because I know that a lot of people made fun of my Concord gameplay, and I'm not saying it didn't deserve to be made fun of. There were definitely moments in that Concord gameplay stream where I was playing real bad, and people were straight up like, listen, man, I don't know that anybody should look to your gameplay to decide if Concord's a game they should play. And this is usually why I like to wait until I get acquainted with a game and I learn it and I get better at it. However, I do have quite a quite a lot of experience with Call of Duty, so I have more confidence there. But I don't know, man. I Call of Duty for me, from what I remember, Call of Duty is like 50-50. And I don't know if this is the way it is for anybody listening to this that also plays Call of Duty or has played Call of Duty, but it very much is like one round, I'm just wiping the floor with the enemy team. I'm going on streaks. I'm doing well. My KD is great. The next round, I can't move. I'm getting, it's this kind of seesawing back and forth where it's like, I'm doing good and now I'm getting wrecked and now I'm doing good and now I'm getting wrecked. And that could be the skill-based matchmaking. I've always believed that there's some kind of insane algorithm with Call of Duty matchmaking where it purposely does this. It wants you to have one good round, one bad round. Or if you have two bad rounds, you're going to, over the next 5, have at least 2 good rounds. I really think it's so finely tuned that it wants players to feel like they're winning sometimes, at least winning enough to make it so you keep coming back and you don't feel totally discouraged. There was also a while ago, there were like those patents that were discovered that these companies were using where they're like, if you're a paying customer who's buying microtransactions and buying weapon skins and stuff, there was the notion that you will actually have preferential treatment when it comes to matchmaking. And that, I don't think we could prove. I mean, I guess maybe you could prove that in a way if you had 2 separate accounts. One that, it's the same player with 2 accounts. One account, you're spending a lot of money on it. The other, you're spending no money on it. What does that look like? I always worry about stuff like that, like how much they could like tweak it behind the scenes. But yeah, I gotta say this year's Call of Duty looks more promising than any other Call of Duty probably since Black Ops Cold War. And I hope it ends up being good. I hope I end up enjoying it. And yeah, so guys, that pretty much does it for all of the topics here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the stream go on for a couple more minutes here, 3-4 more minutes. In that time, I want to encourage anybody, if you would like, this will be the last call. Drop any membership gifts, become a member. We are going to be heading over to the members lounge for a little bit after this. So obviously, I would like as many people to join as possible. But for the next couple minutes, I'm just going to hang out here, open my seltzer water. You can prove they do increase your ping. Is that true, Capono? That just sounds straight up egregious. That just sounds unfair. Oh, by the way, guys, as we're just kind of hanging out here for the last 2 or 3 minutes, do me a favor, hit that like button if you haven't already. You guys are doing a great job today. We're already at 172 likes. Let's see if we can get that up to 175. Really helps the streams more than you know. Appreciate that. Appreciate everything you guys have been doing. You're saying they do evil stuff in Call of Duty now? I mean, I will say that Call of Duty really has changed quite a bit over the last like 6-7 years. I mean, it's like really changed a lot. It's almost like a completely different game from the one that I grew up playing. When I think about Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, World at War, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, it's totally different. MBG Puppeteer by SIE Japan Studio is one of my favorite games of all time. It is an amazing platform with fun/unique mechanics, gorgeous visuals, and funny dialogue. The stage play motive is great. Yeah, I never played it myself, but I have heard of it. all behind the scenes manipulation of your experience. I'm not giving him a cent ever again. Warlock making the declaration. I'm never giving them another cent. Paul says he never heard of that game until now. I've heard of it before. I think I've even seen it. I never played it, though. All right. Guys, this is where I'm going to conclude today's stream, and we are going to head over to the Members Lounge. If you are a channel member, stick around on the channel. You're going to see a second stream go up as soon as this one ends. We're going to go hang out there for a little while. But before I go, excuse me, I do want to thank everybody for your continued support. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. And also, I want to thank everybody who donated or contributed in any way. If you dropped a membership gift or if you re-upped your membership or became a member, thank you so much for that. If you dropped a super chat or a direct donation, thank you as well. I couldn't do what I do here without your continued support. It's a privilege to be able to do this. So really, really do appreciate it, guys. Also want to make sure I give a shout out to Devil Shooter. He does the timestamps for the streams. So if you see him in the comments, show him some thanks, show him some love. I know he definitely appreciates that as well. And yeah, guys, that's going to do it. So again, the Members Lounge is opening up now. And to everybody else, I will catch you on Thursday for the next stream. So until then, take care, everyone.